Hey everybody, this is Don Ward with Third Creative, and I am finally back with something new. It's been a minute, but I'm happy to be here to talk about my newest template, calling it Fallstown. Um, I used boxing sample images for this, but I guess the first thing I would want to say is this is not a boxing template. Obviously it will work for boxing, but this template I think will work well for just about anything, which is something that I always try to do with my templates. The way I have it set up here would work great for football, which is something I've been getting a lot of requests for, but really any outdoor sport it would work well for. And later in the video I'm going to show you some other background options that I built into this. So if you want to use it for something that's not traditionally an outdoor sport, you'll have an option there. But I got a lot of things that I want to cover, so I'm going to jump right into it and hopefully not make this one too long like maybe I have in the past. So the first thing I want to talk about is changes to my bundle option. Most of you may be familiar with that. Typically, there are 6 separate Photoshop files, all sorts of dimensions, which originally I thought might add a little bit of extra value to the bundle option that I'm offering. But ultimately, I've decided to reduce it down to 3 Photoshop files, which may sound like a bad thing, but it's really not. I'm going to offer a vertical, which is what you're looking at here. It's 24 inches, 16 by 24 inches, 300 dpi. I'm going to offer a horizontal version, which we'll look at here. Same thing, 16 by 24, 300 dpi, and the panoramic is not going away. This is a big seller for me. Hopefully you guys are taking advantage of them, but this is a 12 by 36 or 1:3 ratio, 300 dpi, good for team panoramics. But having just these 3 different files or dimensions, you can actually crop to any size that you might need to print or offer, and that's something that you guys are probably used to doing anyway, so should work out well. I did take an extra step to try to help make the process easier by adding in some crop guidelines. If we look over here on the right hand side on our layer panel, the very first one, if you open it up, I've got some built-in crop guidelines to help make sure that you stay out of the danger zones when you're building it for a certain dimension. So for example, this very bottom one here, 8 by 10 or 16 by 20, it's the same ratio, so it works. If you turn it on, you can see we've got his name and part of the text down here, the year, would be cropped off. So makes it pretty easy to find the folder that they're for, like here, text layers. You can move them around, move everything around to fit. So something new, and I hope that helps. But we'll just kind of go right down the right hand side of this layer panel here, starting at the top. I've added a cooling filter and a warming filter. They are optional. They can be adjusted, but sometimes they add a pretty cool effect. So we'll turn the cooling filter on. This is the one that I think I would use if I were going to use either of them, but we also have the warming filter. And that can add a good effect if the color scheme fits it or your lighting fits it. You can also double click on these little camera icons here, and you can change the color if you want to, and you can adjust the intensity with the slider bar. So that can be pretty handy. The next folder that we have here is for all of our text layers. This is the biggest part to this, and I'm going to come back to it, but I've got it broken down into top player name text. So that's going to be this text up here. We've got our large middle text, which is going to be where it says Fallstown, and we've got a top row text for the verbiage that you would have in this top red line, and same thing for the bottom. And then we've got year all the way here at the bottom. So within these folders, you'll have the text layer itself, and it will also have all the additional texture layers and the shape that falls behind the text. And we'll wrap the video up looking at that and going over how you would use those to customize it to your team to get the same look. Of course, we have our team folder here. It's got a mask on it. It's set up for this. You can adjust the mask however you need to if you want to, but you would drop all your team images in here and scale them just above the text here, and so that you can have the individual above. And then of course we've got our individual below it where your individuals would go. You would scale them accordingly. This mask is set up for it to be a team and individual memory mate style. If you remove the team and just make it a memory mate, then you can just rescale your player to take up that room. Next we have our lights in this folder. They're all separate, and I've got them in subfolders all the way down. I guess there's 18 altogether. Each one, if you open it up, has 3 layers. Really, it's probably nothing you want to get into unless you have something specific in mind that you want to do with them and you're feeling adventurous. You probably want to just leave it closed and just work with the entire group folder. And in this case, you can raise it, lower it, or let's say, for example, you want to have the appearance that these lights are a lot closer to the individual than they appear now. You can click on the corner here, hold down Shift, scale it up, center it, and you can have that effect if you want to. The next one, let's go ahead and turn off the individual so we can see it a little bit better. I've got a background glow light, we're calling it, just a little bit of atmosphere or lighting effect. If I turn it off, you can see that it goes away, the effect that it adds. If you open it up, you can play with it if you want to. It's just 3 layers all together. It's got a little bit of masking on here, but I think it adds a lot to the image. If you take it away, it still works, but just a little better. And then last we have our background folder. So if we open that up, let's take a look here. Of course you can change the color. So if you want to add color to it, that's a little strong, but you can adjust it. We'll use that there. We have our dark sky background. It actually has 2 layers in it. One that I use for the top sky, and then if you look down here, we can zoom in a little bit. You'll see a little bit of clouds at the bottom. Just a little extra detail that I like. I think it adds to the image. If for some reason you don't like it, you can either mask it out or actually just come down to this layer and turn it off. So you have a few options there. So let's go ahead and turn that off completely. And now we just can see the very background only. But I did add this additional metal texture background. We'll go ahead and turn it on. Alright, so let's turn a few things off so we can see it a little bit better. There we go. Same effect. We've got this metal concrete looking texture up top, and then we have it showing on the bottom as well, which you can mask that out if you want to. But just an additional option that you have just in case whatever you're working with isn't an outdoor sport and you don't want the dark cloudy sky. So that is a quick tour, but like I was saying earlier, we need to go over those text layers and talk about how we would customize those. And in fact, this is probably the point where I would go ahead and make all those customizations just from start to finish so that you can see exactly how it works. So let's go ahead and zoom in. It might be a little much. There we go. All right, so we can see what we're working with. Let's turn off some distractions like this team and everything else. Okay, so over here on our layer panel, we have the text layers folder. We're going to open that up. And I guess before we work on this bottom part, let's go ahead and look all the way at the top at our name. Let's open that up. There's a few layers here. We have the very first one is a light streak. You turn it off, you can see it adds a little extra effect there that I think looks pretty cool. And then we have a highlight glow that's clipped. If I turn that off, it really kind of flattens it out. So if you turn it on, it just really illuminates the center portion. A little extra dramatic effect. Of course, you have your color picker here, and I did set it up that way because we have this texture overlay, or texture layer, I guess, clipped to it. Just felt that was a better way to change the color of the text than going down here and doing it the traditional way. But that brings us to the metal texture that you can turn off or on if you want, and then you have your actual text layer. It is center pointed, so just click, type over it, it should stay centered, and it's got a bevel and a drop shadow to add these effects that you see here, make it look a little more three-dimensional. That's pretty simple. Let's get down here to the bottom. I think this is the part that's just really going to make your images stand out. I was able to use these textures and some shadows and a few things to add this dramatic lighting effect, this three-dimensional effect. So I've got it broken down into 3 more folders, and then at the very bottom we've got year by itself. It's just a simple layer with the text layer with a gradient overlay, so you can change the gradient. I've got the opacity set to 70%. You can play with that as well, but pretty simple. If you want to change the color, you would go here, just double click on gradient overlay and double click on this section here and pick your colors, or you can turn the gradient overlay off and just use a normal solid color. Pretty simple. But up here we've got 3 folders that make up these 3 sections. So the very first one, we have large middle text. So that's where you see Fallstown. I also have all the layers and elements in this folder for the texture that's clipped to the text, as well as this background wrapping. And that's the same thing for the top red section where it says Molding Champions. That'll be this next folder, top row text. And then same thing with bottom row text. So each section has its own folder where you'll control everything. So let's jump into this large middle text and just go through it here. We've got, first off, we've got a light flare. So this is a good time to talk about the font. I chose this particular font, which is Go Bold Low Plus. But the good thing is that you can use any font that you want, and it may not fit to this background wrapping just right, but I'm going to show you how to adjust it to fit perfectly to whatever size font and whatever font that you choose. But if you do choose something different, it's very likely that this light flare up here will not be positioned in the best spot. So whenever you're done, you want to go and select this light flare, click on one of these anchor points here and move it around. I like to keep it kind of in the middle in the top corner of some of these lights. You can kind of see it move around there. The next layer is a darken gradient. It just adds an extra lighting effect. It kind of makes it look like the light fades from top to bottom. If you turn it off, you can see drastically different. Of course, you have your color picker, so pretty easy to add color to the text. Click here and you can change it up if you want to. But then we have our metal texture. So if you turn that off, obviously very different effect. And you can actually use the levels here to control the contrast, lightness, darkness of this texture. So if you're not familiar with levels, I'm sure there's some YouTube videos out there that will help you out. You should check them out. You can do a lot with them, a lot like curves. And then of course you have your text layer itself with a bevel and drop shadow already built in. If we keep going below it, this is where we start to get to this background wrapping area. Of course, you can add color, change color, and same thing, got the metal texture clipped to this middle text background is what I'm calling it. So this is the one where you would select and use your selector tool and click on a corner, and then you can use the sides and the top. Move them up, move them down, left, right. You can center it to fit around your text perfectly. So let's go ahead and actually do this. Let's get started on it so that I can show you. I'm just going to wing it here. Let's change this to, let's say, Trojans. We'll make it a football one. All right, so Trojans. I'm going to change the font too, but you can already see by changing just the word, this background area doesn't fit. So we'll see how we can customize it. Let's look here. I think I want to use, I've got a Spartan text. Yeah, go blue, but we're going to use NCAA Michigan State Spartans. Can't believe I'm saying that. No, just kidding. Okay, so we're going to use this font. I'm going to make it bigger. This is already set to center point, so I could click on this point here and scale it up, but I'm going to use my character panel up here, and I'm just going to increase to the right the size until it fills up as much space as I want it to. Somewhere getting there. Okay, so it does look like it's just a little bit off-centered. So I'm going to show you a little trick that I use. With that layer highlighted, I'm going to do select all, and you'll see this wrapping box. It goes around the entire canvas. Some of you may already know this little trick, but if I go up here to layer, come all the way down to align layer selection and choose horizontal centers, it will center it perfectly for the entire canvas, which is what I want. All right, so we've got that, and let's see, I'm going to go ahead and change the color. Let's see, I think we'll do like a green and a gold. So maybe we'll use green for this. Let's see. Let's try right there. You can always change it. All right, so we've changed our color. And I think I want to add a stroke to this, which is actually turned off. Oh, one thing, you see these dotted lines, I always forget to deselect. Alright, so we've got our stroke added, and I want to change the color. Let's see, going with the gold. Maybe something like that. Always copy this little code here. Makes it easier to match colors because we'll probably use the same colors for the other strokes or something very close. Okay, I can increase the size here maybe. We've got it on outside. What does center look like? Yeah. I think we'll stick with outside, maybe just make it a little bigger. Yep. Right there, 24. Okay, so now that looks pretty good to me, but we have the background that we need to adjust. So if we keep coming down here, I think I'm going to just do that now. Middle text background, I have it selected. I've got my selection tool. Click on a corner here, and I'm just going to click on the top, and I'm going to drag it down to about where I want it. It'll cooperate. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to use my arrow up just to center it a little bit more. Okay, so now we've already got it fitting our team name. Let's go ahead and change the colors of this background. So I'm going to turn that on. And I think I will continue to go with the gold. Let's see what the same gold looks like if I paste that code in here. Too bright. I want it to stand out more, so let's bring this way down. Let's come down this way. There we go. Yeah, maybe something like that. Alright, so now I think the stroke maybe? I don't want to keep it white. So if we keep working on this middle text background, double click on the stroke, and maybe this should match the text. So I'll go back to that text stroke. I might have already had that copied in there, didn't I? Oh well. We'll use that same color. Yeah, cool. All right, so we're pretty much good there. Let's go back and look at this light flare that I was talking about. Make sure that I've got it where I want it. Move it around so I can, yeah, it doesn't have a super dramatic effect, but we'll put it right there in the corner of the J. All right, so we're done with the middle text. Next, we'll collapse that and we'll move to the top row text. So let's just start off by changing it to what we want it to say. And we will, let's see, this will be the name of the school, so we'll make something up. Let's say Ormond Christian. All right, so I can already see that it's obviously too high. So if I select the top row text folder and I have my selection tool, I'm just going to use the arrow down key, get it down there where it looks good. Now you have the option, there's a little bit of space on both sides of where it says Ormond Christian. I don't think that really looks bad. It's not too much space, but a few things that you can do. You could use your character panel, and over here, this VA, it will adjust how much space is in between your letters. So for example, I can make it larger and it will, well, you have to have it selected first, that helps. But it'll make it take up more space if you wanted to. The other option is to come down to the top text background and then obviously scale it down to fit. So we'll leave it like it is. I think I'm going to leave, let me see, let's make the text yellow. So let's see, or a goldish color. So I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. That's not the color we want. Yeah, something darker. Let's try that. And while we're thinking about it, before I do anything else, I'm just going to go ahead and change the bottom one too. Okay. All right, so we'll go back up to the top row text. I haven't talked a lot about these, but we've got a metal texture for the background. There's a few highlight layers. You might need to reposition those. It just adds a little extra dramatic lighting to that top background layer. But let's change this and let's go with something similar to what we used for the background in the top. So we'll copy that code again. Now I can already tell this part is taking a little bit of time, but it's worth it. If you can customize this, you can use the same one that you do in the first place. You can just drag them over to your other, your your horizontal or your panoramic. And this is just really what I think makes the image overall. Of course, your subjects do. Lighting them well always does. Okay, now let's do a stroke. And what was the stroke on the first one for the text? Let's start off with that and see what that looks like. Oops, didn't want that. About copy instead. There we go. Alright, so let's collapse that. Alright, so now we're coming back to the background. We're going to change the stroke from white to this gold. There we go. And again, while we're doing it, we might as well, while we have it copied, go into the bottom one, all the way to the bottom layer. Double click stroke, click on color, paste our code. Saves us a little bit of time there. Alright, so looking good. What's left? We need to work on this bottom. So I know that we need to change the color of the background. Alright, so we'll go to the top row text and we'll use the same color code. Alright, collapse that and go back. Get rid of this red. There we go. Alright, cool. Looking good. Okay, so I think next thing we need to do is change where it says boxing. Get that. Let's make it football. And it doesn't fit. That's okay. So to fix that, we will just go down here to where it says bottom text background. And I'm going to click on this corner here, hold down shift, drag up, do the same thing in the other corner. Let's commit that and select all, go to layer and align layers to selection and do horizontal again. Yeah, very subtle, but it is centered. Alright, so just to wrap it up, let's change the gradient on the year. Not quite the right shade of yellow. That works close enough. You guys know how to do a gradient so you can make it match. And then I think the very last thing, let's look at it. Let's go down to the bottom background here. And add some color. Obviously not red. Let's go in here into these yellows. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. Okay. Let's call it good, wrap it up. This video ended up being plenty long. Anyways, that's it. If you have questions beyond that, email me, don@thirdcreative.net. If you go to the website, thirdcreative.net, there's a contact me option that you can use there. Hopefully I'll have something else coming down the pipeline soon. I'm sure that I will. I know that I will. But until next time, thanks for watching.